over again. And yet we talk about it all year round, over and over, and analyze every position and then get ready. And the amount of time they actually perform, or we actually watch the actual literal product compared to how much we talk about it, it's really fascinating. But that's people love it. I love it. And the NFL is genius for the way they've made themselves a year-round product out of essentially was only 17 weeks.
Yeah, so I was talking to a friend about it today, and he asked me, why do you enjoy this so much? And I had to stop and ponder that. And so here was my answer. I said, so it's three things. Number one, I love the NFL and college football, and this is the point where they intersect. Like, there is never going to be a closer crossover between if you're really into college football and you are really into the NFL. This is the point where all the guys you watched all last fall in college, the very best of the best, are now coming over into the league, and some of them are maybe going to play for your team. You're going to see where the Penn State guys are going to end up going. So I'm interested in that. I also think it's like a psychologically safer version of following college football recruiting, because I've always said the draw for recruiting, which, as you know, is a little opaque to me. I do not love following the recruiting stuff. A big part of it is that it's all so impermanent. A guy can flip his commitment. Now with the transfer portal, you even get a guy on campus. He might be gone tomorrow. He might be gone after this season. He might be gone midway through this season. Who knows? There are no rules. But the attraction is that it's hope, right? You are always imagining that the talent that is going to unlock a championship for your team is somewhere in the next recruiting cycle or in the next draft. But in the draft, once you hear the guy's name called, that's it. That guy's going to be an Eagle, at least for the next several years, for good or for bad. And fortunately, improbably, to those of us who have been following the team for a very long time, that's been good news over the last 3 draft cycles in Philadelphia. And so there's always that hope, right? And then I also, for me personally, I'm just fascinated by the differing and conflicting philosophies about how to manage an organization and build a roster and manage a finite pool of resources in terms of your current draft picks, your future draft picks, and how you value those things, and to a lesser extent, the talent on your roster, who sometimes becomes part of a draft day trade, like A.J. Brown was for the Eagles a couple of drafts ago. So all of that to me is just very interesting. Well, maybe over the course of the 2 hours here, get into what the Bears did with the first overall pick in the draft and what you think of that. But Buzz, you are a Trib Live guy. You cover the Steelers. I am a man of the people. I know that's what the listening audience wants. They don't want 2 hours of me and Goon talking about the Eagles. There's no accounting for taste, but we're going to talk about the Steelers a lot today. And so I'm wondering if just right out of the gate can give me a snapshot of where you think the team is, just in terms of what they've done so far this offseason and what their needs are coming into tonight and this weekend.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. In free agency, they haven't left themselves an out at 2 positions. The free agency season, they trade away, of course, Deontay Johnson, one of their top 2 receivers, and how you define it. And they released their starting center for the past 2 seasons, Mason Cole. Now, that move in a vacuum, or either one of those moves in a vacuum, I don't think fans were really that upset about. Mason Cole, I think he was probably better than maybe his reputation was, but hey, the Steelers cut him, so they couldn't have thought too much of him. They cut him early in the offseason.
Let me tell you, my like barometer of what the people are saying is what the crowd at the cheese shop here in State College says in the morning while I'm getting my coffee. And I heard some unflattering things about Mason Cole today. I'll just put it that way, because we were talking draft and his name came up. The Steelers faithful, not big fans.
Yeah, that's what they still, like I've been saying, that they don't have a starting center on the roster right now. Which
I mean, to be fair, you guys went like 3 decades with a Hall of Fame or near Hall of Fame quality center. I mean, if Jeff Hardings would have played more seasons in Pittsburgh as a center, right? Like he's maybe even in that conversation, but he was certainly like a Pro Bowl. I don't know. He was never an All-Pro, right? But like right up there, like
he was right
for his time. He won a Super Bowl there. He was one of the best at his position in the league. And that was, on the heels of having Dermotty Dawson and then Mike Webster. So, like, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, they know the center position.
Yeah, and even you go Ray Mansfield was a Pro Bowl type center before Webster, and Marquise Pouncey was a multi-time All-Pro after.
Sure.
Yep. And there only was a couple years in the middle between Hardings and Pouncey, or the Justin Hart Hartwigs of the world. But they won a Super Bowl with Justin Hartwig. That's the last Super Bowl they won when he was their center. Justin Hartwig and Mason Cole, sort of Spider-Man meme, same type of player, just sort of a replacement level center they had.
I maintain that the 08 Steelers may have been the worst offensive line in a Super Bowl champion of all time.
It really is remarkable when you think about it, because they were not
wild. Like that offensive line.
They acknowledged it by sort of tearing apart that line almost immediately within the next couple of seasons, turning it over. Right. And that just shows how good. That was really an underrated defense. We're not going to talk historical Steelers here, but that 08 Steelers defense. I always laugh how the 2000, and I'm not. Hey, the 85 Bears and the 2000 Ravens were great defense. I'm not trying to diminish them. I'm saying the fact that they had Trent Dilfer as the quarterback on the one team and Jim McMahon, for all his. I know you love Jim McMahon, for all his being Jim McMahon, was awesome. He wasn't the best quarterback. I think the fact that they had bad offenses glamorized those defenses more, and the Steelers had a Hall of Fame quarterback that sort of didn't allow that defense to get its credit. But that's neither here nor there. We're not going down that road.
I'm not going to get derailed with your classification of the 85 Bears as a, quote, bad offense, but, maybe off the air. But go on. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So center and wide receiver, big pain points, right?
Those are two places they need it. And it's really been, and this is, of course, Omar Khan's second draft he's running. So, but historically, the Steelers have always given themselves an out, right? As most teams do, of course, in free agency, heading in the draft. You don't want to really paint yourselves in a corner thinking we need to draft this position, but that's kind of where they're at. There still are a couple guys in free agency that they could circle back around to, Mason Cole being one of them. Connor Williams is still available. So the plan right now is Nate Herbig, a former backup on the Eagles, to be the center if the season started today. But does the fact that they cut Mason Cole and he was below Mason Cole in the depth chart, does that mean anything to anybody that he's not exactly the best option maybe to start at center?
I appreciate the way the Steelers love to draft like a great linebacker and then also sign his crappier brother to just have on the roster, I guess, just for the novelty of it. I don't know. It's remarkable to me.
Like Tomlin seems to love a good story. It's like somebody's brother, somebody's son, an ex-player, three brothers on the team, another brother here. It's been like that. So that's why when you do a draft, you're always like, everybody knew who mocks 6-round picks accurately all the time. And everybody in the world knew that Connor Hayward was going to be drafted by the Steelers 2 years ago because he was Cam Hayward's brother. And sure enough, there he is. He's on the depth chart because they do things like that. So I don't know if there's any there's not like another Pouncey, triplet. It wouldn't be another twin, I guess, or somebody available, or Marquise Pouncey's son's not available to be their center. But so that's the fascinating, I think, discussion is whether they want to get one of the top centers, whether it be Jackson Powers Johnson or Graham Barton, to a point, Zach Frazier in the second, or they'll be more of a second round. If they want to take a top center in the first round, because that is their glaring need. If they don't take him in the first round, you can't really depend on Frazier being in the second round. Then you start maybe going down to maybe Hunter Norzad in the middle rounds or something like that. Then you're kind of like, well, you best case scenario, you can never depend on your mid-round pick being a starter. You hope so. Maybe your evaluation says that, but I don't think you want to go into a season saying my fourth-round pick is going to start at center or tackle or whatever it might be. Yeah, so that's kind of the fascinating discussion, how much they value these centers above other positions, and if it's enough or not enough or not far enough below that it's worth taking the guy that they need a hole at. And also historically over many decades, like you said, they've always sort of valued center more. They've always had they took Marquise Pouncey in the first round, where a lot of teams, there's probably a lot of teams would never draft a center in the first round. I'm imagining. I don't know. You would think there's probably a handful of teams that, we know we can get that position. And it's like a running back type eval where they figure we can get a center anywhere, right? We can get in the middle round. We can sign this, whatever it is, and would never draft the center that high. So that's where the fulcrum, once that piece falls into place, you'll see a lot more things will make more sense. But yes, they need a receiver. They're going to draft a tackle somewhere pretty high for sure. They'll draft a receiver pretty high for sure. They've been trying to make their defensive line younger over the last few years to varying degrees of success. They're still starting a 35-year-old and a 30-year-old. And they really need to replenish that. So I'm sure a D lineman will be somewhere, probably not the first round. That'd be really surprising, but I guess it's not totally off the table. But you look at their official vid. I mean, it's essentially there's 4 positions they're targeting high in the draft: center, offensive tackle, defensive line, and cornerback. And it's almost no scenario where their first pick wouldn't be one of those, and probably very few scenarios where their second pick wouldn't be one of those either. Yeah.
So let me pitch this at you and see what you think of it. look, there's always push-pull between you draft at need versus you draft best player available, philosophically speaking. And by the way, speaking about draft philosophy, I am 100% with you on that. I understand there are organizations that don't value center to the point that they would ever take it in the first round. But I just think if you look over the last 20 years, look at the number of Super Bowl teams and the number of consistently successful franchises that were anchored by a really great center and how impactful having a difference-making guy like a, high above replacement level performance at that position can be. Like, to me, I think the smart organizations prioritize it, and especially if you're picking in the bottom third of the first round, like Pittsburgh is. Yeah. Look, if the need is there and the talent is there, don't be afraid to make the pick. And what I'm suggesting is that Pittsburgh seems to be, from my perspective, in a really enviable position because they're picking at 20. You said they're looking at, to varying degrees, center, offensive tackle, wide receiver, and corner. Just given the talent in the first round of the draft and who we're feeling pretty confident is going to go in the first 10 picks, there is going to be a very good player at one of those positions that just drops to them. They don't have to worry about moving around too much. Does that seem right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, receiver and tackle for sure. And, it seems like receiver and tackle both, there's 3 receivers that there's 0 chance it's going to fall to them, and probably 2 tackles. Fashanu, I can't imagine him falling 20, right? And Joe Alt's not going to fall that far.
I think there's Joe Alt for sure. I think there is like a single-digit percentage chance Olu falls to Pittsburgh, only because I've seen he does seem to be dropping a little bit. Like, he was initially considered like a top 10 pick. Yeah. Then you started to see him listed as a top 15 and now a little bit lower. And for the Penn State fans listening, if you're wondering what's going on, I think it's a combination of 2 things. The knock on Olu has always been that he's an absolute monster in pass protection and leaves a little bit to be desired as a run blocker. That's the criticism on him. And then it's also just the fact that there are other guys at other positions that are moving up the draft board in terms of being a good match with the teams drafting and the need. So some of it is just that, there's maybe 1 or 2 offensive tackles who have leapfrogged Olu in terms of how teams value them. And then there are just other positions that may go ahead. So he could drop a little bit. And I've seen, multiple mock drafts reflecting that, but he never gets past Cincinnati at 18. And the only thing I think, though, Buzz, is, again, if you're just tuning in, it's the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. Chris Buchanani, joined by Chris the Buzzsaw Adamski from TribLive.com, talking NFL draft. I think with the news today about T. Higgins, depending on how the wide receiver position goes through the first 17 picks, if there's one of the 4 top wideouts there, does Cincinnati just say, hey, look, it's an offensive league? There's a considerable drop-off after Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, who seems to be the consensus number 4 guy. I'm assuming none of the other top 3 will be there. Do they go wide out and open it up for Olu to be there for Pittsburgh at 20?
Yeah, and I mean, the Bengals have a history of a very similar at number 5, 3 years ago now, taking Jamar Chase, and everybody said, "What are they doing, taking a receiver that high?" And they it's a passing league. We got to, like the same logic you just said, pretty much. Everybody thought they were going to take the tackle. So it's kind of deja vu in that sense if it does play out that way. And there is
fascinating. Real quickly, that was a fascinating when I talk about how teams approach the draft and how they value guys. That was a choice between Jamar Chase, who's been phenomenal, and Penei Sewell, who has been great. Both of those teams that drafted Penei Sewell went to the Lions. They've both ended up in their conference championship game since that draft. And, I look back and I wonder, was it the right decision for Cincy? I don't know. I mean, it's hard to argue the results they've gotten from Chase. On the other hand, they've had a lot of injury issues at the quarterback position, and part of it has been that they just haven't been able to keep their guy upright. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to derail you too much.
No, that's all right. Yeah, no, that's just part of it. I do think in terms of the Steelers, you're right, talking about positional and wide receiver seems like everybody says every year it's a deep wide receiver class. And the Steelers 5 years in a row until last year, 6 out of 7 years. They've been drafting a receiver either late second or early third over and over. 5 out of 6 years, I think it was, until last year. They were taking a receiver in that window. And there's a lot that makes it because it seems as if everybody there's that again the tier of the top three that aren't going to they're going to be gone quickly. Duze, Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison Jr. So after that, to varying degrees, I mean, there's obviously guys that are considered higher, but there's not much of a drop off. And the Steelers have always been between the pick and Chase Claypool. He was great as a rookie. We could say what he wants, and they got a second round pick back for him, but he was like the 11th rated. They kept getting these guys that are the 11th, 12th, 10th, 11th, 12th rated receiver over and over and over again, or drafted receiver. The receiver that was drafted, I shouldn't say rated. Deontay Johnson wasn't rated that high, but he was the 12th receiver drafted in that class. He ended up being an NFL good wide receiver for a third round pick. So that's been their history. Now it's a different regime, different GM at least, and that history doesn't predict future outcomes or whatever. But if you look at value, if you're not going to get one of the top guys, you can go late in the second round and get a fairly highly rated receiver. Tackle's a little bit different, where I don't think that second tier of tackles, or that however you want to call it, it's not as tier ish after alt, and maybe is the clear number one. But I don't know if that supply of premier tackles, or however you want to put it, will last to the end of the second round. But yeah. I think it'll go to the middle of the second round, and maybe you maneuver a little bit or something like that. And that's why the center thing is fascinating, because it does seem like if you don't take one of those centers at 20, unless you're going to trade back up or something, you might not get one. And it seems like there is enough depth at the other at tackle and receiver that you can address it that way. And I put out my mock draft, and I don't think in the second round, but in the third round, I think despite those four positional needs with certainty, and then you can throw in, so you have D-line, and the Steelers that can't seem to help themselves when it comes to edge rushers, even though they don't need one now. And with trying to find the next Ryan Shazier, like it's just like, I know they just signed Patrick Queen to be that, but if they're in the way, again, inside linebacker is kind of a less valued position across the league. If one of the top guys is still there in the second or third round, even though they don't necessarily need it per se, I feel like Mike Tomlin can't resist it. He sees a guy who goes sideline to sideline. I got to put that guy in the middle of my defense next to Queen and just nominate that way. It would be the rationale. So despite them not, I could see that, not the first round necessarily, but second or third for sure. I could see something like that. And then you still have these holes in your roster. I guess corner's not really a hole per se, but depends on what you think of Dante Jackson coming from Carolina in the trade for Deontay Johnson. It was supposedly was on the verge of perhaps getting released by the Carolina Panthers for the trade. So I don't know how comfortable that makes you feel that they're starting cornerback, but it seems like the Steelers, for all their successes over the past 3 decades, have always had a hole at cornerback, or at least not a.
It's been a persistent problem for a long time, huh?
Yes, it seems like, and that's why Joey Porter Jr. tied into the Penn State. It's so exciting that I don't think they've had a corner that had this much after one NFL season. You felt this good about having this much promise of being that finally shut down corner. They got they got Joe Hayden, later in his career, and they've had some, there's been good enough corners, but not a consistent Pro Bowl type, and he's not there yet, Joey Porter Jr. But there's legitimate reason that you can believe that. It's not, not pie in the sky that he is that guy. And he showed that during his first season. So but you don't have the second guy, and they don't have a slot corner on the roster. But that's something that, to go on a little tangent, Mike Tomlin loves the nickel slot. He always he loves using it at the blitz. He loves the piece. He always, every time he goes through the opponent every week, he talks about the slot guy. But as much as he loves it, they always sign these guys in May. The end of the free agent scrap heap. Arthur Mollett a couple years, and they churn through them. Shannon Sullivan this past year, and it's they sort of don't value Mike Hilton. They had as an undrafted free agent, became a really good nickel guy, and they let him go in free agency. They didn't want to pay him. So as much as they seem like they value him, they don't. So I don't think. But sorry, I'm blank. The Penn Hills kid from Penn State, who Hardy.
I was just going to say, if you want to get a nickelback, I am dying on this hill, Buzzsaw, because I have talked to some friends here in the local media, and opinions are totally split on Daquan Hardy's prospects as a NFL player. I love that guy. I think he is just a perfect example of a kid who doesn't necessarily, win the underwear Olympics or have a great spider graph. All he does is play football. And I know that sounds cliche, but you just watch his tape and the number of things he does well and the intensity and consistency with which he does them, I think makes him a valuable, day 3 pick, like later rounds for sure. But, talking about a Pittsburgh connection, a guy I have really liked when he's been healthy on the Eagles is Avonte Maddox. He's been a really solid slot corner for Philadelphia for several years. And if you look at the way he is built, he looks almost exactly like Daquan Hardy. I mean, it's not that he's too small to play in the league. And I also think that the kick return abilities he flashed in his last year here at Penn State may suddenly become more relevant with the changes to the kickoff rule in the NFL. I think for the first time this season, you're going to see teams, especially on day 3, looking a lot more closely at can a guy bring dynamic kick return ability because of the potential that the new kickoff rules, which if you're not familiar with them, you're going to have to Google it and I'm not going to try to explain it, but for sure, it's going to open up opportunity for more big returns. And so I'm just planting my flag. That's my guy, Daquan Hardy. If somebody takes him on day 3 late, like 6th round, 7th round, you're going to get good value. I really believe it.
And I do believe that he's definitely on the Steelers board, and you never know how those things can play out, who might still be there or whatever. But I assure you, the Steelers have interest in taking him in the 6th or 7th. Well, they don't have a 7th round pick at the moment, but who knows how things trades or whatever. They could definitely take him, and he definitely could bring him to camp as an option if he maybe doesn't start right away on defense. Maybe he carves a special teams role in some way. It's weird now too, like the coverage on kickoffs is different. Everything. Who knows how that's all going to shake out in terms of the bottom of the roster type guys like that. But I think for sure Hardy's the type of player that Mike Tomlin would like to have, even if they know he's on the practice squad, even though even if you just assume he's just going to be on your practicing with you, it seems like he has that type of intangible that they would like to have around and see if he stay in the mix. It's good to have in the roster, good to have out in the practice fields with you. And if worst case scenario, if he's that and he makes the iron sharpen iron or whatever Tomlinism you want to use. But yeah, I could definitely see them doing that. They need somebody at least to try to compete for their nickel because they don't have a guy doing that right now on the roster.
He's a guy who, as Brandon Noble would say, although he'd say it differently, plays with a little number 2 in his neck, and that would be a great fit in the Steelers organization. Okay, Buzz, we're going to jump to a break here. Everybody, you are tuning in to the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. Goon and Ironhead are both out today. They are down in Florida, both assisting many great Penn Staters with a charity golf tournament down there. So I'm filling in with Chris the Buzzsaw Adamski from TribLive.com. We are talking all NFL draft. Today, we are live at Quaker Steak and Lube. We're on the airways of 98.7 The Fox here in Happy Valley, and we will be right back. Stay with us.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
Since retiring, I have spent my time searching the countryside for the hottest wings in America. I always seem to end up disappointed. You call these hot? Back off, Luigi.
Mamma mia.
Your hands, busboy. Your wings suck. I knew I should have stuck with Quaker Steak's triple atomic wings. You think I'm tough enough?
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
Sioka Toyota of Williamsport invites you to stop in today or check us out online. We have the smart path to your next Toyota, like the all-new Crown, BZ4X, the all-new Grand Highlander, Corolla Cross Hybrids, Sequoias, and more. Over 100 new Toyotas here and on the way. Don't make a $1,000 mistake. Choose Sioka Toyota of Williamsport and see the Sioka dealership's difference. Buy or reserve yours today and see for yourself why Sioka Toyota is the only stop you need for your next new car. Sioka Toyota, it just feels right.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen Baker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen Baker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen Baker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon and Ironhead.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show, coming to you live from State College's Quaker Steak Lube on 98.7 The Fox. I'm Chris Buchanani from the obligatory PSU pregame show, filling in for the Goon and Ironhead, and I am joined by Chris, the Buzzsaw Adamski, my old radio running mate from our Penn State College days from TripLive.com. We are talking NFL draft, and of course, because I give the people what they want here in sunny central Pennsylvania, and because I've got somebody from Trip Live, we're talking mostly about the Steelers. We will talk a little bit more just about the draft in general, and I will slip in some Philadelphia Eagles talk. But Buzz, just getting back to where we left off before the break, you were talking about, the different options Pittsburgh has to go with their first-round pick, taken 20th overall tonight. I think a very low degree of likelihood that they look to move out of that pick either up or down, just because it looks like the top end talent that's available in this round and the positions of need are going to match up pretty well. So, need and best player available could be the same guy. Fair?
Yeah, I could probably see them more going down than up. I have a hard time. I've heard some people bring up going up. I don't necessarily see that. I could see it just because not aggressively go down per se, but maybe more so, because I think 20 is kind of that's when you can start getting maybe a team wants Michael Penix or targets somebody coming up from the second round or low in the first round. I think 20 is kind of a sweet spot for that, where the cost for the acquiring team isn't going to be as high as going in the top 15 or top 10 or certainly top 5. So if there's whether it be a quarter, or it could be anybody really, but quarterback, of course, is the sexy thing, and that's something that a team wouldn't want to miss on if they had a Bo Nix or whatever it might be. So I could see that happening for that reason per se, but you're right. I don't think they would go that far down. It might be a few picks here or there, kind of like last year they got Broderick. They went up to 4 picks to get Broderick Jones. I don't think they'll necessarily do that because you're right. I don't. Maybe they super value somebody, but it does seem like there's enough where it's almost like we talked about. I mean, the top 3 receivers aren't going to be there. And you even talking about, I think they would like Fashanu. There hasn't been much smoke with that, probably because he won't be there at 20. But also, if that's his evaluation, for better or for worse, the Steelers are sort of they're looking. They need a right tackle first off, more so. And they want more of they would probably prefer more of the, road grinder type, a run block strength type. So if that's the case, I don't think they'd be aggressive going to get him. So
with Russ Wilson and Justin Fields, Buzz, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit. I don't know. I know the Steelers are looking to throw the ball all over the yard. And just to be fair, I gave the negative view of Olu, which is that he's lights out as a pass protector, maybe leaves a little bit to be desired in the run game. The flip side to that is that he's smart. He's a hard worker. He's played at a top end program, and his tape is great. And he's still, even having come back and played another season than he maybe needed to, so to speak, at Penn State, one of the youngest players in the first round, so that he's still got a lot of room to grow. So if you feel good about your development, whatever questions exist about Olu as a run blocker, let's not, guy's not a turnstile or anything. Yeah. I think that's a minimal complaint. But as you and I talk about, Buzz, between the end of the college season and the end of April, I do really think some of it is just that NFL scouts get bored and they start looking for reasons to nitpick guys. And of course, there's always a ton of smoke blowing around. So you don't even know how much of the intel that's out there is actually real and how much is misdirection. So, I'm sure there are a couple Penn State fans who are thinking that I'm trying to cast shade on Olu as a run blocker. I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you this is why when you get to the point you're splitting hairs between 3, 4, 5 first-round offensive tackles, and you're trying to decide which one do we want to pick, the ones who are favoring other guys over Olu, that's what they're thinking.
Yeah, and I mean every year, of course, the quarterbacks push people down. I mean, there was a top 5 grade or projection for probably 2 years now on Olu. So I don't. There's nothing that's happened either on the field or off it that would push him down. Maybe it's just you're right. Maybe it's been so quiet, and the fact he is the youngest or among the youngest players too. I'm sure. I got a feeling he'll be taken, maybe not higher than we think, but safely. In the range that he should be taken. But it was just because he's just the only guy, and it ties to Penn State well, that if you're talking about however you want to define the elite tackle, the elite receivers, the elite centers, like you could say, when you're matching up the Steelers' needs here. And, if we go back to the Steelers, the cornerback is also another wild card. Would they? Because, again, they have Dante Jackson to start. They just took a cornerback last year with the 32nd overall pick. And there's more pressing needs at the moment for an outside corner per se. But did they fall in love with one of the guys in the first round? It seems more of a day 2 or maybe 4th round type of situation. And did they fall in love with one of those guys? That would be eyebrow raising to me. But like a Wiggins or something, I could see them becoming infatuated with him. Maybe probably not at 20, especially when you have the other needs, but. That's a wild card. It's worth considering if you look at the Steelers and what they're taking, and you can't be totally shocked by it if something like that if they do take one of the top corners or one of the corners that's available there to them.
Okay, your gut feeling, what position do you think Pittsburgh drafts at tonight?
Well, can I say offensive line? that covers me 2 spots. So
I'll let you weasel your way out of that. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So because those are I don't want to say I'd be surprised if it's not one, but one of those 2 for sure. And I think center is. I published my mock and it went with Amarius Mims from Georgia, but it was all. That's one of those things where my partner Joe Rutter we kind of go over it and we're like, well, we don't pick the same guy just for the sake of just having some sort of, unless we were really 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 sold together. So I try to go just a little bit as an alternative there. And but I probably lean more towards center, and whether then it's Barton or Jackson Powers Johnson, which one they prefer or which one you would think both are still available, but there's a chance that one of them isn't. And do they really value one over the other? I could kind of go back and forth on that. And I think they really like both of them, whether they really like one of them more than another, or whether they're happy because they're different. Almost players at different backgrounds, that's for sure. Different careers, I guess I should say, different college careers. But if not, I think, and there's just so many tackles that the odds are they probably really are enamored with enough that one would be there when they pick. So
yeah.
If I had to answer, I'd probably still say center, I guess. Although I'm not real confident about it, and tackle it would probably be because there's more tackles. It's more likely to take a tackle. There's more tackles they could take there, right?
So so let's delve into that a little bit more. You brought up Amarius Mims, who interestingly has been linked to Philadelphia in several mock drafts too. And again, I think it's almost become a meme at this point. No, it has become a meme. The Eagles drafting Georgia guys, but I think I said it in the segment to open the show that I recorded with Goon. It is basically a cheat code, in my opinion, to draft guys from Alabama and Georgia. I mean, they don't all hit. In fact, you talk about J.C. Latham, who's another one of the top-rated offensive tackles in this first round. If you go back and you look at the history of first-round offensive tackles from Alabama, it's actually pretty ugly.
Alex Leatherwood vibes.
Yeah, Alex Leatherwood is like one of the names that pops out at you right away for sure, and others as well. And the knock is that you get maxed out at Alabama. Like they coach you up so well that you hit your ceiling before you leave school, and you're also surrounded by so much talent that whatever deficiencies you have don't show as much. So there's positives and negatives to looking at the top 2 or 3 programs in the country and drafting from them. But, Mims is one of those guys. But I want to focus in on the 2 first-round center prospects, excuse me. So there's Jackson Powers Johnson, who's from Oregon, and Graham Barton, who's from Duke. So I know Oregon is on the up, and Duke is good for Duke. No one is confusing either one of those programs with Alabama or Georgia. So right out of the gate, there's maybe a little bit of safety factor when you take a guy from a program like Georgia, just because, Broderick Jones, right? Like you could just point to it and say, hey, look, we took a Georgia kid. What do you want? Powers Johnson, kind of a guard center prospect. I saw early on a lot of evaluators were classifying him as a center. Then again, we get farther away from the season. The scouts start to get bored. They start picking apart his game, and maybe they say, maybe this guy's better suited as a guard at the next level. Barton from Duke, on the other hand, Graham Barton, like super interesting guy in that there seems to be consensus that if needed, he could play almost any position on the O-line. Like he could be a center, but he could actually be you'd never want him as a starter, but he could be like an emergency right tackle if you needed. So he does bring that kind of versatility. And again, maybe a little bit better suited at guard at center. Probably the best pure center in the draft is, you mentioned him earlier, Zach Frazier from West Virginia, who is looked at as like a second round prospect, but a high second rounder. So do you have any sense of, just in terms of the type of player Pittsburgh likes to bring in and just your personal sense of these guys, which one you think is the best fit for the Steelers?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Powers Johnson has that. I mean, I don't know. It seems like every team, though, they like the mean, nasty offensive linemen. It's like that always gets brought up with the Steelers. But I don't think there's there's many value talent guys that on friends are like, we like a real passive offensive line. Nobody really says that, right? you always want the aggressive guy that gets in there, and so
I think the Bears and the Giants both are they do actively seek that out. It would be a more logical explanation than they were looking for nasty, aggressive guys. They just ended up with the ones.
Yeah. So, but I that's why for a while I was with Power. See, the Barton thing is so fascinating because he's been a tackle, and the book, I guess, is that if he did go to Alabama or Georgia, he would have been a center. Right. He would have been a center beforehand. So it's like, it's hard for me, but I'm not you spend a first round pick on somebody. I play fantasy football, right? If I have a first round pick, I want a sure thing, okay? But that's not real life. And if your scouts and your people project and you see the skills there that he can play center, it's just like, to me, it's like, you're using a first round pick on a guy that hasn't played the position you're going to put him in. You better be damn well sure he can do it, right? You don't have any tape of him doing the job that you want him to do. You don't have any in terms of real life, the bullets flying in an actual game. So that part to me makes me nervous. But, again, I don't think it certainly doesn't seem it's scaring away, a lot of scouts, a lot of people who do the draft evaluation for a living. But yeah, Powers Johnson, in terms of what you hear, and, everybody wants a center who's cerebral and wants to be in and Barton, maybe it's because he went to Duke. I don't know. Seems to score high in that too. So I've gone back and forth on which one I think the Steelers prefer. I think they like them both, and they are, a little bit different, or at least again, in terms of their experience, their resume, and their background, at least. So that's another fact. I think the center thing is the most fascinating. That's the fulcrum of how the Steelers draft will fall. They take a center first or don't. Yeah. And which one of those two they want, or which one of the two they end up with. Maybe the decision will be made for them. Although I think at number 20, it's possible the decision will be made for them. Send one of those two guys before they pick. But
I think it would be a surprise if they don't have their pick of those two guys if they stay at 20.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I still think JPJ. They'd have two JPJs on the roster. It'd be Joey Porter Jr. and Jackson Powers Johnson. Look at that. So it might be so for that. There it is. A good story. Maybe they'll do it for that reason.
You know what? Mike Tomlin loves a good story. Two JPJs. They're going to go for it. Yeah, I'll buy that. Although, again, my honest take on it, I really love Zach Frazier. I was super impressed with him when West Virginia came up here and played Penn State last year. I think he's the best fit. But to your point, if you are looking to get a top-end center out of the draft, and as we just discussed, in all likelihood, you're going to get to pick between Powers, Johnson, and Graham Barton, but one of them is going to be there. Like, there's no way both of those guys are going in the top 19 picks. It's just not the way NFL teams value that position. You can do it, right? Whereas if you take any other position in the first round, then it becomes something of a crapshoot because you have to hope either A, Frazier falls to us in the second round, or then you have to start trying to maneuver up to get him. Because after that, I do think just in terms of the guys that you talk about, you want a sure thing. There's a drop-off, right? Then the question marks start to come in after Frazier in the second round, that center.
Yeah, after you get past those three for sure, then you can't go into camp thinking this guy is my starter, right? Those three, I think you can reasonably say those are your starters. After that, you can hope, you can see this. I mean, he wins a job. You got to bring in a veteran placeholder of some sort or have some sort of competition at that point. So, yeah, and there's definitely going to be receiver there that's good enough that you could take late in the second round with the 51st pick. Whenever center, you don't know that tackle's a little bit more. There seems to be a drop off to a point where you can't depend on one of the. Depends on again how you define the top tackles in terms of second round. But yeah, center. That's what I don't think you can't go into the second round thinking you're getting Frazier at 51. So if you don't take the center tonight, if you're the Steelers. If you want Frazier, if you value him, or I guess that there's a chance then even if you don't, that's the thing too is you have the 20 hours or whatever it is to take your deep breath, and if you really fall in love with the tackle or whatever Wiggins or whatever you end up doing, and you still need the center, and one of those two centers is still on the board, then maybe you get aggressive and spend the afternoon tomorrow trying to trade up in the second round or at least setting the groundwork for it. If you talk to get the team that picks 36, 37, whatever it is, and one of the centers is still there, then maybe you can leave yourself that way because that is possible. But yeah, then like I said, they've kind of painted themselves in the corner needing a center. I don't what their options are, what they do. It
may be they just love Nate Herbig better than anyone else.
Yeah, that's what they say publicly. And hey, they would never mislead you in that way, right? I mean, they would always trash the guy in their depth chart who the guy in their room. Yeah, well, he's no good. He can't start for us. Don't worry.
I will tell you, as an Eagles fan, I have respect for Nate for what he is. And if he is your second stringer, a guy who gives you guard center flexibility, you feel great about having that guy on your roster as somebody who can step in and start for you in a pinch in case of injury. To play, 17, 18, 19, how many regular season games do they play now? 22, whatever it is. To play 17 regular season games as your number one guy, especially on a team that is breaking in two new quarterbacks, one who's over the hill and one is like maybe not even going to get to ever climb the hill in order to have one day be over it, and also to be run heavy as a result. Like, yeah, you got to do something else.
It was fascinating last offseason that the Steelers signed Herbig first, if you remember, and at the time they still had Kevin Dotson, and it was like, well, Herbig's going to compete because they gave him that money that's like really good backup money or really low end starter money. What is it, like $3 million type hit or around that range or so. So it was conceivable he was going to be the starter. And then 4 or 5 days later, they signed another Eagles interior offensive lineman to start left guard and then gave away Kevin Dotson, who became a Pro Bowler with the Rams and signed a huge money deal there. It's a whole other avenue to go down that we won't go down right now, that somehow they misevaluated or misused Kevin Dotson, or at least compared to how the Rams are using him.
All right, Buzz, we're going to jump to another break here. It's the top of the hour. Folks, you are tuning in to the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show, coming to you live from Quaker Steak and Lube in State College on 98.7 The Fox WFXS, Pleasant Gap State College. We will be right back.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
Since retiring, I have spent my time searching the countryside for the hottest wings in America. I always seem to end up disappointed. You call these hot? Back off, Luigi.
Mamma mia.
Look, hands, you busboy. Your wings suck! I knew I should have stuck with Quaker Steak's triple atomic wings. You think I'm tough enough?
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
Sioka Toyota of Williamsport invites you to stop in today or check us out online. We have the smart path to your next Toyota, like the all-new Crown, BZ4X, the all-new Grand Highlander, Corolla Cross Hybrids, Sequoias, and more. Over 100 new Toyotas here and on the way. Don't make a $1,000 mistake. Choose Sioka Toyota of Williamsport and see the Sioka dealership's difference. Buy or reserve yours today and see for yourself why Sioka Toyota is the only stop you need for your next new car. Sioka Toyota, it just feels right.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen Baker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen Baker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen Baker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon and Ironhead.
Hey, everybody. It's the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show, broadcasting live from Quaker Steak and Lube in State College on 98.7 The Fox. I'm Chris Buchanani from the obligatory PSU pregame show, filling in for Goon and Ironhead, who are down with a load of other Penn Staters in the Sunshine State, helping out with a great charity golf tournament today and to the weekend. And I am joined talking NFL draft with the first round airing tonight, rounds 2 and 3 tomorrow, and the remainder on Saturday with Chris the Buzzsaw Adamski from triblive.com. Buzz, it's a pleasure being back in the saddle, is it not?
It is. I jumped at the chance. It's been a long time since we've had a every once in a while we had I've jumped on one of the obligatory podcasts during a lot of COVID when there was a lot of time to fill,
Indeed,
a void of content in a lot of ways. I remember doing that, but yes, it's been longer than I'd like to admit since we were on the student station. We won't even get into how many decades have passed at this point. And shouts to our good buddy Rocco Damaro, who was giving us some encouragement in the comments section. Rocco, what's up? So I want to follow up just on a few loose ends from the last hour, Buzz. First and foremost, I'm curious. You brought up Isaac Seumalo, the former Eagle, who is now starting for the Steelers. What have the reviews been locally with him so far in Pittsburgh? Yeah, the line as a whole struggled early last season. It found its groove midway through, and I think there was this sort of he came here with a really good resume. There was good optimism about him. He was the top guard available. Yeah, and I think there was the assumption, sort of, especially preseason, and what are you going to take from? You can take some from practices, but I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, this 7-year starter at the NFL is struggling. And what are you going to say? I think there was this baseline assumption that he was going to be really, really good. And I think when the line play struggled early on, I don't think it was directed at him per se, but it was sort of. But by the end of the year, and he definitely has a demeanor. That's for sure. On and off the field, that both kind of commands respect and kind of like, don't mess with them sort of thing. And I think that he had the respect of the, it's become, for all we talk about the Steelers line and need to rebuild it. Now they had 3 veteran free agent signings in the middle of their offensive line there. James Daniels from the Bears and the now departed Mason Cole at center. So you had 3 that weren't homegrown type players. And so he was the oldest of the crew and still was kind of the leader. So I think by the end, everybody was kind of happy with how he kind of became kind of that guy, especially now that Mason Cole's gone, because Mason Cole was kind of in a different way, sort of the steward of the line, or however you want to put it, kind of. So I think overall, he by the end of the season for sure there was good reviews in terms of where they're at, and probably they're. Well, I mean, how you evaluate Broderick Jones and being a rookie playing out of position and that, but you can make the case he was their best offensive lineman last year for sure.
So, Buzzsaw, believe it or not, you mentioned he's a 7-8 year vet now. Isaac Seumalo is actually the first example of Philadelphia potentially drafting Jason Kelsey's replacement. Like he was selected with the thought that he was insurance for a while. We don't know how many more years Jason Kelsey is going to play, which they've now done 3 times. They did with Isaac and then with Landon Dickerson, who's settled in very well at left guard, and Cam Jurgens as well, who's actually going to get his shot to fill the shoes. But he does have the ability to play center. Has there been any discussion about if things just don't work out in terms of the draft or in terms of his fellow former Eagle Nate Herbig? Has there been any talk about maybe letting him take a crack at making the snaps?
The organization's pretty much poo-pooed that and put it down. I think that there is a level of, you don't mess around with the veteran like that, and you have him if you like where he's at. That was all he brought in that way as advertised. I think there was more, and there wasn't even much consideration of that. Like James Daniels also is center capable, as they say, the starting right guard, and he's in the final year of his contract now. And if they were to move one of those 2 veteran guards, it was Daniels was always more likely, but they've publicly said they're not going to do, again, take the publicly for what it's worth. Desperate times, if this draft doesn't fall the way they need it to, and whatever happens, if there's any bargain basement free agents left, then desperation is the mother of invention, right? Especially if Herbig's not it. But I can't see that how. I think they're relatively happy. Maybe not as much with Daniels because he'd be up for an extension now, and there hasn't been much talk about that. So I don't know what long term he is, but I wouldn't be. I don't. There's really been nothing along those lines because but again, if you get to that point, maybe they do, maybe something does happen. I just don't know that then you have a whole guard, right? I don't know what they have necessarily to fill it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All the more reason why you're convincing me more and more that it just seems like the need and the talent available is going to match up at 20 tonight for them to fix that problem at the center position. So we've kind of established that's a need for them, an urgent need. Let's talk about tackle. In your mind, is it imperative that they come out of this draft with an offensive tackle?
I think they like Dan Moore more than anybody, or certainly more than the fans. I like him more than the fans as a starter, but you have to acknowledge he's no better than average and an average. So best case scenario with Dan Moore is if he's barely adequate, right? Or he's adequate as a start. Let's say label him adequate, right? As a starting left tackle, and you can get away with that. The problem is he's entering the final year of his contract, and even any starting left tackle in the league is going to get a lot of money. So I think they like him.
Yeah, very good point.
It's the mini version of quarterback or whatever. Left tackles make a lot of money, and if you have one on the rookie contract, you sort of can exploit that and deal with adequate play if you're not paying him that. So they're not going to extend him. So that's why Mims, I think, is another perfect fit, because if the knock on Mims is they doesn't have the experience and might need, out of all the tackles, a quote-unquote redshirt year or year to assimilate. And
sure.
that would work out perfectly where you have Dan Moore as the placeholder for one more year, and then Mims can come in, and probably then what you do is you move the 2 college teammates to tackle Broderick Jones and Mims back to where they played the national championship game 2 years ago. Broderick Jones a left tackle and Mims a right tackle, and there you go. You're set up, hopefully, for a decade of tackle. So that's another reason why I think Mims is a perfect fit, is they have the placeholder tackle already here under contract, and they've repeatedly over and over, even by the very fact they didn't they had to bench somebody to put Broderick Jones in the lineup, and they took Broderick Jones away from his natural position and put him on right tackle because they liked even Dan Moore more than Chukwuekorfor for last year. They're starting right tackle and decided to bench him. So that's how much they like Dan Moore. And again, I'm probably a little more positive on him than a lot of people are. I don't think he's been as bad, but again, adequate's probably about the best you can say about him in terms of that. And he doesn't even want to play right tackle either. He's pretty vocal about that. And you can't even, so I don't even know you can be your swing tackle if that's the case, but that's a whole other situation. But but having him allows them to not have to do the plug and play tackle situation, right? That they don't have to get a tackle, but next year they're going to have to get a tackle because I can't see any scenario where they give him, an extension. So
yeah.
So,
as a rule in the NFL, the problem of today tends to get addressed more quickly than the problem of tomorrow. Although, again, my belief is that the organizations that look ahead are the ones that consistently do better. I mean, I've been, on the whole, very pleased with the way the Eagles have managed their personnel over the last several years. And part of that has been, we're drafting 1 or 2 years. Well, not typically 2 years, but at least 1 year ahead, thinking ahead. And, if you take a guy like Landon Dickerson and Jason Kelsey decides to come back and provide all-pro level play at the center position, look, you end up with a Pro Bowl guard who they just signed to a big extension. So just talking about that issue of organizational philosophy touches on something else you mentioned here at the outset of the show, which is that this is going to be draft number 2, right, for Omar Khan, the Steelers GM?
Yes.
My perception, again, as an outsider, and you can tell me if this is close to the bullseye or not, is that there's been a discernible shift in some of the things that the Steelers do organizationally. Like there's been a philosophical shift with the new blood in the GM's office. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think in terms of the samples, you could say they've trended ways and Omar Khan came from the organization. He's been part of the organization since 2000, so it's not like he's totally new. But obviously he's the final decision maker now, where he never was. If you take the sample size of the past 22 months compared to what they did for the previous 22 years, whether it's coincidence or not, I mean, they're pretty aggressive. I mean, the whole quarterback thing we did, those 8 days in March, they can do a 30 for 30 on that, going from Kenny Pickett's "we believe in Kenny Pickett" to bringing in 2 other guys and getting rid of Kenny Pickett. It showed a lot that
we believe in Kenny Pickett. No, actually, we believe in other teams' leavings. So, I mean, the funny thing about that whole ordeal, Buzz, is that I'm not sure at this point, all due respect to Russell Wilson's career, that there's a good NFL quarterback anywhere in the mix of that entire trio of guys.
Yeah, you're probably right, especially in this. And I think let's face it, if they truly believed Russell Wilson, even at age 36. And I get it. He's 36. So in theory, you bring a younger guy, and I get it that they probably figured the acquisition cost for Justin Fields was worth a flyer. But you wouldn't have done that if they truly believed that Russell Wilson was the guy. It's a weird thing because are they in win now mode now? They have a 36-year-old starting quarterback. You don't do that if you're not trying to win now.
As you and I have discussed this ad nauseum all the way back to last year, Buzz. I think they're 100% in win now mode. Because if you go back to last season, if the Steelers don't have that one inexplicable stretch where they lose, 3 games in a row to like some of the worst teams in the league, they're the number 1 seed in the AFC, which is wild because they looked like hot trash in that first playoff game. They barely belonged on the field. If the NFL hadn't expanded the wild card, they wouldn't have been there. Yet, had they just been able to be, I don't remember which teams it was, like the Raiders or some Raiders level.
Cardinals and Patriots within 5 days.
There you go. Yeah.
At home.
Terrible. The Patriots, garbage. Yeah. They lose to both of them. And if they don't, they're the number 1 seed if that doesn't happen, which is wild. But I guess if you're Pittsburgh, you look at that and you say, well, look, we're not going to fix our offense. We're not going to transform our offense in one offseason. But we have a defense that we think, especially if TJ Watt can actually stay healthy, is good enough to keep us in contention. So, look, there's no magic bullet for the quarterback position here. So we are basically going to try to win games, 17-10 to 13-9 and see if we can repeat what we did last year and just not lose to the absolute bottom feeders. Like that's our strategy, is that right now the interstitial period is still win now. And it's like you just hope to get the last gasps of of Russ Wilson. And if that doesn't work out, you hope that Justin Fields, who they got for an absolute song, I mean, that was like a virtual no risk acquisition on Pittsburgh's part. You just hope that, the fact that he played with terrible coaching, a terrible offensive line, and absolutely no weapons at the skill positions all reflect on his overall performance at quarterback, which when you put it that way, which I think is the most charitable interpretation of Justin Fields' NFL career so far, which I'm doing for the benefit of the Pittsburgh fans in our audience, I think could actually give you some hope, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can talk yourself into anything. I mean, the same people that were talking yourselves into say, well, Kenny Pickett, he's fourth quarter Kenny. Look at him. He has the intangibles. He's on his way up all the way until March 10th or whatever it was this year. All of a sudden, 4 days, hey, this is great. We got rid of Kenny Pickett for a guy who's so much better than Justin Fields. I mean, if he had a good line and a good coach and a good everything.
So here's my suspicion. I talked to a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers fans around here. As you know, Center County is a quote-unquote Pittsburgh market. Which surprises a lot of people I know who are from outside the state, but I'm like, no, man, like I don't look at the map. Like, trust me, I live in Western Pennsylvania. Okay. I think there were two kinds of Steelers fans. There were the Steelers fans who hated Kenny Pickett. And then the Steelers fans who were also Pitt fans who were pretending that they liked Kenny Pickett, but also secretly hated him. Because to your point, like the minute he was out the door, I did not hear anybody say a single nice word about that guy. Everybody was celebrating. They were thrilled. I don't know if any of it was fair, but like clearly, like the experiment did not work in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, there was a point where you could, and it's crazy because the camp went so well, and everybody saw the preseason on the field went so well, sure. and the season ended the year before so well, and it just. But the weird part to me was that the things that you thought he was supposed to be good at, he was inexplicably wasn't good at a lot of. The accuracy was off, which is something that I thought was going to be a baseline, to worry about. The decision making. I mean, he always was kind of known that the book on him was always kind of maybe the pocket presence, but that wasn't there. Or not having the pocket presence, and that wasn't there. And then whatever degree of you want to criticize him for, be it the end of the season when Mason Rudolph and the not dressing for the game and the requesting the trade after. I mean, he's admitted he requested a trade. That's not even any. I think that's fair to. If you want to criticize that, he didn't want to compete. He didn't want it, whatever it was. I mean, he can have his own justification for it, and that's fine. But I still think after 2 years of pumping up the guy's competitiveness and intangibles and team first, for that to happen is sort of it's hard to reconcile that,
Yeah.
So, but it was. It's a fascinating tenure. Within 2 years to go up on a first round pick, no matter what position it is, let alone the starting quarterback, and be your franchise quarterback and move on. And you're right. I don't know if they're any, but I'll make a Penguins reference. I don't know if you get there, but like them getting Eric Carlson and getting with Russell Wilson kind of reminds me of the same thing. It's like, I don't think it's going to work. It probably won't work, but it's their best move and it's their best shot. It was worth the shot that it might work. Right. And it's all both quarterbacks, or if you throw in third string, are all on Kyle Allen, the number 3, all on 1 year contract. So if it doesn't work this year, you turn them go next year. But your point overall about what their style of play is in terms of grinding out these wins, and yeah, I mean, it's proven for me that they'll get the 9 wins or every year, or get the 500 every year, over 500, and probably slip into the playoffs. But I think they've been pretty, even the organization from Art the second on down, that vocal about their feeling. I mean, there's frustration amongst the fan base because they've been in this malaise of this 9-8, 10-7, 10-6 first round playoff loss for 7 or 8 years now.
I've said this before. I feel like Penn State's fans and the Steelers fans, I mean, in many cases, they are literally the same people, but just like figuratively, they're also they're the same people.
Yeah. So they've been pretty vocal about wanting to break that ceiling and get to win a playoff game at least, which still was in Super Bowl. And I just don't know if building a team that way, it's their best hope. It's their best hope to get to the playoffs. And I guess you get to the playoffs, anything can happen is the rationale. But I mean, if you're trying to slay the Chiefs, this isn't the path to do it, I don't think. But, again, you get your one shot on a Sunday, or maybe somebody, but it's been a formula that's worked to this point. Again, you're right. If they happen to play better in that 11-day span when they lost the 3 games or whatever it was, they're higher, they're hosting a playoff game, top seed. And so it's there, but I don't know. I don't know what the ceiling is, but Russell Wilson as recently as, what are we talking? How many months ago? What was thought enough across the league that he was a bidding war for his services to take over. Now, did he regret
a bidding war, which, by the way, the Eagles lost. Thank God. Can you imagine how miserably furious I would be if they gave up something close to the Denver Broncos trade for the return that the guy? Yeah, just nuts. Which is why I'm here to say, kids, it's one of the great market inefficiencies in the NFL. By far, the most valuable position has never been easier to dispose of and acquire new players at. This is why, you talked about, it's unusual to walk away from a first-round pick, especially at the quarterback position after only 2 years. That would have been unthinkable at one point. Yeah. But now I think with the number of quality guys coming out of college every year, paired with the rookie wage scale and the lack of impact on your salary cap that a first-round quarterback has versus the Sam Bradford era and the way, a bad pick could just destroy your cap flexibility for half a decade, this is the best time to be an NFL GM in terms of managing your quarterback position, I think. And if you find a guy and you feel internally that you've got enough tape on him and you've seen enough in and outside of the building that he's not going to be a top 12 guy, just cut bait. To me, the marker of that new era arriving was when the Cardinals took the guy, if you've been listening to the whole show that Goon talked about in our recorded segment, Josh Rosen. And then the next year, we're like, this guy's a loser. He stinks. We're first overall. We're taking Kyler Murray. I remember being right here at Quaker Steak and Lube talking with Goon about this. And I said, I think Arizona's going to take Murray. He's like, they just took a quarterback. And there's number 7 overall last year. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore. You can cut these guys loose. And the cost to your organization is a fraction of what it used to be. The only thing that matters is getting it right. And you can take advantage of the fact that there is not a huge financial penalty to just re-racking as many times as you need to at the quarterback spot. So if you take a swing and you missed, the moment you have conviction inside your evaluation room that you missed, cut the cord and go again.
Yeah, I've always thought about, and just first it ties back into you talked about earlier about the draft and how it's asset allocation, asset management, and how teams – I think more approach the modern way approach it. People are smarter in terms of, used to just be in all sports to a point, an ex-player be the GM. Now you have more people that have different backgrounds and everything is more of a chess piece and extracting value from this asset and getting in, flipping this asset for this or whatever it is at the appropriate time and things like that. And yeah, quarterback now. And I wonder if, Field isn't a great example because he's always kind of a polarizing player or in terms of I think people always liked him or valued him more than some people were never going to value him. I don't know, but I think maybe even a decade or so ago, if he was in the market, the Bears might have got their initial ask of a whatever it was, a first round pick or second, a much actual compensation for a guy who'd been a 3-year starter and still was young and everything. And I think now, because of what you're saying, I think teams know the market's kind of flooded, or they know they can, but why are we going to take their guy when we can draft our own guy? They're trash, and why don't we this shiny new object looks better, and we don't have to pay them yet for.
And by the way, nobody in Chicago cares. Can you imagine just not too long ago, if you took a quarterback in the top 10 and less than 3.5 years later dealt them for a 6th round pick, people would be losing their mind. Nobody even cares. Everyone understands on some level how disposable and replaceable quarterbacks have become in the age of the rookie wage scale, where that position is not commanding cap-killing money when you take it in the first round of the draft.
Now, you do have the Bears here where the only reason this all exists for the Bears, I imagine they'd be going into the running it back with Fields again if it wasn't for the Panthers giving them their draft picks. So that's where, and then getting it wrong when they did it so far. And I don't know. I mean, we'll see. You can't, obviously, you don't give up on him yet. He wasn't Josh Rosen bad, I guess. Bryce Young last year wasn't Josh Rosen.
Do you believe, Buzz, we are living in the age of the Russell Wilson, Bryce Young, and Deshaun Watson trades all happening within like a few years of each other? I mean, like 3 of the worst quarterback trades in the history of the NFL, probably. Maybe that's a little bit unfair to Bryce Young. We'll wait and see. But, I mean, when you look at what C.J. Stroud was out of the gate, and you look at what Bryce Young looked at like last year, on top of the fact that then they also ended up losing the chance to take, Caleb Williams, or at least have the number 1 overall pick. If they would have taken Stroud, they wouldn't take Williams. But just wildly terrible quarterback trades.
Yeah, and that allowed them. So, if you're the Bears, you had to do what you did. I'm sure they thought they would get more for Justin Fields when they started this process, and that's where so the Steelers essentially running into the season with an entire quarterback room that's inversely, like their salaries are inversely proportional to their standing in the depth chart, but just marginally, right? Well, we got like 1.4 million for Kyle Allen, 1.3 million, or what, and the total room that's
Kyle Allen. I didn't even realize they had him, by the way. That's
great. Well, they redid. It's great. They shipped out all 3 quarterbacks from last season and brought in 3 whole new quarterbacks. Actually, all 4 quarterbacks from the end of last season because the Wizard was there. I see. Why am I don't just broadcast enough stuff, book. I have my name. Trace McSorley, of course, was there at the end of the season for the.
That's right. That's
right.
Yeah.
So they completely did the whole quarterback room over again, but they got one guy who was shopped for months and can only get a 6th-round pick. Another guy whose team is paying $77 million not to play for them, and it's signed for the minimum. And then Kyle Allen, a backup who the Bears signed Mitch Trubisky to be their backup, or the Bills signed Mitch Trubisky to be their backup and let Kyle Allen go to the Steelers to be their 3rd string. So that's the resume of the 3 guys that the Steelers entire season, the defense perhaps one of the last years, certainly one of the last years, maybe the final year, maybe it's already done, of TJ Watt's prime. This is what the offense's hopes are resting on. One of these quarterbacks, or one of the first 2 quarterbacks, anyway. So it's not ideal, but the Steelers were so lucky. If you're a 30-year-old Steeler fan, for all you knew, right today, 30, your whole life essentially, from what you knew was them having an elite quarterback. And that's what this league is. You have the teams that have the elite quarterbacks and the teams that don't, and now they're seeing how the other half lives. And to the Steelers' credit, like I said, they made the playoffs last year, and they've been able to keep their heads above water here. And they've got essentially 2, I don't say lottery tickets per se, but you got 2 shots at it. That's kind of the beauty of it. If Russell Wilson doesn't work out for whatever reason, you have another viable option that I think out there. Remember what you think of Justin Fields. I think it put him on a team. Even the Bears last, where they end up, they had 6 or 7 wins, right? Whatever you think of Justin Fields, if the Steelers recipe works, if the defense is as good as they believe it can be, and it potentially can be, and then the other pieces fall into place, you can make the playoffs again if you had Justin Fields. I guess if you're the Steelers. Yeah.
There is no question. I mean, no team has devoted more of its salary cap to defense and less to offense than Pittsburgh. It's very clear what they're doing and what they're trying. All right, Buzz, we're going to jump to our second to last break of the show. On the other side, we'll talk a little bit more just broadly about the draft. I do also want to talk to you a little bit about Pittsburgh's history in the first round and how it was for a long time unbelievably good and not so much in the recent past. So we will do that right on the other side of this break. You are listening to the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead Show. Chris Buchanani and Chris the Buzzsaw Adamski from TribLive.com filling in for Keith and Jeff. We are live at State College's Quaker Steak and Lube on 98.7 The Fox. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
Since retiring, I have spent my time searching the countryside for the hottest wings in America. I always seem to end up disappointed. You call these hot? Back off, Luigi.
Mamma mia.
Your hands, busboy. Your wings suck! I knew I should have stuck with Quaker Steak's triple atomic wings. You think I'm tough enough?
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
Sioka Toyota of Williamsport invites you to stop in today or check us out online. We have the smart path to your next Toyota, like the all-new Crown, BZ4X, the all-new Grand Highlander, Corolla Cross Hybrids, Sequoias, and more. Over 100 new Toyotas here and on the way. Don't make a $1,000 mistake. Choose Sioka Toyota of Williamsport and see the Sioka dealership's difference. Buy or reserve yours today and see for yourself why Sioka Toyota is the only stop you need for your next new car. Sioka Toyota, it just feels right.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen Baker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen Baker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen Baker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon and Ironhead.
Welcome back, everybody. It's the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show, live on 98.7 The Fox here in Happy Valley, streaming also on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm Chris Buchanani, filling in for Goon and Ironhead. I am joined by Chris the Buzzsaw Adamski from TribLive.com. We're talking NFL draft and reminding you that Quaker Steak and Lube here in State College is the best place to come out and watch tonight's first round of the NFL draft and the entire NFL draft. Great staff, great food, great beverage selection, and the widest selection of excellent wing sauces here in Happy Valley and in many places. Buzz, I know you're a Western Pennsylvania guy, a Mars planet yourself, so you probably had heard of Quaker Steak and Lube before I even knew it existed. I got to ask, do you have a favorite sauce?
Oh, Louisiana liquors, man.
Are you really? You're a liquors guy. Huh?
I'm always middle, and I guess that's kind of their signature. I didn't even know if I realized that at the time. From what I understand, and I hope I'm getting the history right, especially with this one, that Sharon, PA is where their initial restaurant was.
That sounds right.
And we used to, as a fleet of family, we made family trips up to Sharon for around Easter and around Christmas every year. I always look forward to getting the wings. And then there was I think they were $13.99 all you can eat wings at that point when I was probably dating myself. At that, all you can eat wings on Tuesday nights, and I would go and
we have it right here in State College. Starts at 4 p.m. You can catch your second half of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show while you enjoy your Quaker Steak wings.
There you go. I would put on a show back in my days of when I would eat more. But yes, I always liked the liquors, and now they've had them at PNC Park and places like that. And I know they're always there, so it must be a popular flavor. But I enjoy hybrid. Hot, I like Cajun. I like hybrid hot and barbecue type flavors, and there's wings, and that kind of fills all those roles. So that's why I love it.
I'm an Arizona Ranch guy myself, although I do also although I don't like the name. There's a hot barbecue flavor, which includes the name of a rival Big Ten university's mascot. I refuse to say it live on air, but you'll know it when you see it, when you come here and it's on the menu. I can recommend it. I just won't speak its name. So, Buzz, I've joked with you before, given the priorities in the Pittsburgh media market have gone from the outhouse to the penthouse, and that you started at the Tribune-Review covering Penn State football, which I know is not a high-esteemed gig out there in the Steel City, but quickly moved up to covering the Steelers as well as the other pro teams there in the city. So this is, I know this is an all-hands-on-deck kind of night for folks who cover the NFL, and I appreciate you being so generous of your time and hearkening back to our student radio days here and doing the show with me. But so what's tonight going to be like for you in terms of covering the first round?
Yeah, the brass for all the teams, they don't go to, or the general manager and coach, and certainly for the Steelers, they're at their own facilities still. So There's obviously representatives on site in Detroit tonight. So they'll actually, there's a little bit of insider stuff that there was a media room in the Steelers facility, the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex, and it was right outside. There's glass doors that go to all of the administrative offices, from Mr. Rooney to every coach's room, position room has a different office, and the media relations, whatever, the trainers, I guess, but whatever, you know what I'm saying. So we were always right there, and right when you walked in, all the 6 Super Bowl trophies lined up, you could see them, when we went in to there. COVID happened. Okay, so COVID happened. We weren't there for one whole season at all in person whatsoever. And then because of social distancing, they spread out the position rooms too. The Steelers, the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex, over 25 years old now. They're talking about replacing it. It's kind of small for NFL standards nowadays. When it was built, it was a state-of-the-art and big, but now it's probably the whole building, Pitt and the Steelers share, it's probably average size for an NFL facility now. So
well, I know all about that here because Lash, when we built it, was like a palace. And now if you listen to the, facility sycophants here in the local market, it's like may as well just be like a ramshackle barn,
Yeah.
So
but
that's why we can't beat Ohio State. It's, but Drew Aller got here and they basically has to sleep on a pallet of straw. So that's the problem why we can't win 1-score games against good or evenly matched teams. Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. Yeah, I could go over with that.
We'll save that for another show. The next time Goon and Ironhead are out.
I hope this story. So they split up the rooms and they took over the media room, made that the offensive line meeting room, or the media room, turning the offensive line meeting. So when we came back in 2021, they still wanted us out of the building, okay, because it was still COVID restrictions type things. They put us in an old racquetball court, which was built only because Power, when they built the facility, was a big racquetball player and wanted a racquetball court. They put a racquetball court. There's the big open indoor field, and there's a little racquetball court.
That's what Penn State does to our basketball team when Bon Jovi's at the Bryce Jordan Center.
So, but it had become like unused because Bill Cowher used it. Mike Tomlin doesn't play racquetball. No one plays racquetball. I mean, I like racquetball myself, but hey, no one plays racquetball anymore. So there's an unused thing. So they literally put us in the racquetball court. Now that first year, because it was temporary, it was still COVID, it was just literally a racquetball court. They put some fold-out tables and folding chairs in there. We had extension cords everywhere, probably fire hazards with the one plug that ran in there and had 18 media members' laptops on it. So going into 2022, then whenever things return back to quote unquote normal, the coaching staff, Mike Tomlin's like, we like that offensive lineman. We're keeping that for ourselves. They kept us in the racquetball court. Now they redid the racquetball court where they made it, at least finished it and put in walls and all the amenities that you need. It's still a racquetball court, but that is now our room. And it's in the indoor field, which is across the parking lot from the actual facility. But for the NFL draft, because of the fact they don't care, trust me, it's not because of the media they're trying to make us more comfortable, but because they need to do the press after every pick. The coaches come in. Mike Tomlin comes in. Sure, it's right there. They don't want to have them walking. They got to go plan for the next round, whatever it is. So they come in. They put us there. We're back in our home media room is what I'm getting at. So it feels it's like harkening back to the good old days when for us when we're in there in the facility. But yeah, there's a lot of standing around and waiting, at least for the Steelers, when they're always picking in the latter portions of the first round, which is compliment to the organization, I guess. But we'll get down there and there'll be the initial buzz, but then it's kind of like once that kind of burns off, like, well, let's see what happens. And there was the one year though, you got to be there and got to be on your feet, because the one year they traded up for Devin Bush. They picked 10th overall. When everybody you get ready, things are timed out. The plan, then everybody's media outlets has the print plan still for some people, and there's the post things on the web, broadcast, things like that. People are ready to go, and when they pull a fast one on you, they're like, what if they trade out of the first round? We have all these plans for first round pick, and it's I don't know. It's probably not going to happen, but it could happen, right? So then you wait, and then all of a sudden it's go time. But yeah, we're right there, and it's not too much different functionally than from maybe a regular season day, at least in terms of the works flow.
So, Buzz, I want to talk to you about what Pittsburgh has done in the first round. So, it's over the years, as we've gotten bigger and bigger sample size that I've really been paying attention to it, it's remarkable how big of an advantage you get if you can hit on your first round draft picks, man. That makes or breaks championship caliber organizations. Like, just no question about it. Like, if you look at the last two trips to the Super Bowl that Philadelphia has made, one successful, one not, but both great teams, great seasons, like, foundation of both teams is hitting on your first round draft picks. And so I went back, I looked at about the last decade or so of Steelers picks. They took 5 linebackers in the first round, which I guess is, again, if you think about the organization, that does make some sense, but it still sticks out. Like, in an era where that position is starting to become less valued, that they invested in there 5 times in the first round. Now, again, I understand linebacker, quote unquote, means a little something different if you're a base 3-4 versus a base 4-3, those kind of things. But then they took 1 corner, 1 safety, 1 running back, 1 quarterback, and an offensive tackle, which was Broderick Jones last year. So I'm going to give you those guys. Okay. So go ahead. What were we going to say?
I was going to say there was 8 years in a row. Well, there were 7 years in a row they took a defensive player with the first round pick. And then the 8th year, the first round, they didn't have a first round pick because they traded for Minka Fitzpatrick, also a defensive player. So essentially, 8 years in a row, they invested a first round pick on defense, which is notable in its own right, and maybe speaks to intentional or not. There's probably every year of its own vacuum. I don't think they looked at it. I don't think they set out and said, we're going to draft a defensive player every year. I'm sure they didn't do that. But I'm sure their internal, I don't say bias, but their internal, mindset and philosophy help steer them that way often, and you have a position right now where all those guys, and it's not all those guys, but they need a second contract, and that's how you have a salary cap situation like you talked about, where they devote more money to the defense than do the offense. But go on, it's just a notable part of what they've done recently.
So NFL draft is tonight, first round on ESPN, starts at 8:00. This is the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. Goon and Ironhead both out at a charity golf tournament today. Chris Buchanani from the obligatory PSU pregame show filling in with Chris the Buzzsaw Adamski from TribLive.com, talking the Steelers in the first round of the draft. Let me just take you back to 2013 and read you these names. 2013, we start with Jarvis Jones, loser, didn't get a second contract. He stunk. Ryan Shazier, great pick, but obviously tragically couldn't finish his first contract. Bud Dupree, that's another stinker right there. That guy did not get another contract. So talk to me about Artie Burns. How do people feel about that pick in Pittsburgh? Artie Burns, they go first, finally, they go first round corner, and it's Artie Burns.
And that's kind of what happened. Because remember, that was the William Jackson year, and there was another top corner, and Burns was sort of in that second tier, for lack of a way of putting it, at least that the way it wasn't. People were like, they maybe William, and then the Bengals trade up their division rival, and William Jackson didn't have this great career or anything either. But I think he probably would have been better off. But then it was crazy because year 2, it looked like he was going to be a good corner. He had a good stretch there, and people were talking, and then it just all kind of fell apart. And he's still bouncing around, but yeah, he's become sort of a punchline. maybe I don't say unfairly but I don't think he deserves to be in the Jarvis Jones level necessarily. But hey, the proof's in the pudding.
Didn't get a second contract, right?
Yeah, correct, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so then 2017, by far the best pick out of the lot here is T.J. Watt. Like that guy is probably going to be in the Hall of Fame. Then the next year, 2018, they take Terrell Edmonds, who, again, like a nice player, but when you're taken in the first round, you're expected to be something more than what he was.
And that's the cautionary tale on this. They paid them so they needed a safety that year. They were going to take a safety that year, and they had to take a safety that year, and they took a third round safety in the first round, and he became a third round level player where he's a starter. He started 6 or 7 years in the league, which is fine. He was an okay enough player, but it's your first round pick. That's you need better than that for your first round pick.
A replacement level safety. I understand they took him at 28, right? There's a different standard for a guy taking that late in the first round than for somebody who's taking the top 15, but still, like, you need a little bit more there. Okay, so next year you talked about that move up to number 10 to take Devin Bush. Like, completely fair to call that a failure, right? Even though he had an unbelievable rookie season where he looked like he was going to be defensive rookie of the year, and then after that just went off a cliff.
Yeah, he got hurt, and for whatever reason, blame the injury or not, but he was never the same, even close to the same player. And then it just really turned into it just didn't work out well on a lot of levels by the end of there. And they were happy to. It was like, this has to end. And he lost his job to Spillane, and just yes, definitely a big miss there. Yes, especially considering you traded up for it.
As you pointed out, in 2020, they had no first round pick because they broke my heart, by the way, by beating out Philadelphia in trading for Minkah Fitzpatrick with Miami. Now, I mean, to be fair, there was no way the Eagles were sending a first-round pick for Minkah to Miami, and Miami was looking at the time, the Steelers were flailing, and they were like, this is great. The Steelers are going to be bad. This is going to be a really high pick. And then they went on their usual heater that they do to preserve that streak of non-losing seasons that I know Steelers fans just love so very much when you bring up with Mike Tomlin. But that was probably the second best after T.J. Watt utilization of the first-round pick in the last decade was the trading to Miami to acquire Minkah. And then the last three picks after that in 21, 22, and 23 were in order. Najee Harris, which, we'll get into that in a second. And then Kenny Pickett, which was obviously a complete failure. And Broderick Jones, which we're going to give, an incomplete. You can't really judge after 1 year. But, I mean, so far, no major red flags that it was a complete disaster, right?
Yeah, no, I think generally, I don't think there's any reason to there's no reason to still think he won't be the player they thought he would be. I mean, I guess you can nitpick and say he didn't seize the starting job right away, or maybe they didn't, or is that more they didn't give him the starting job right, or didn't want him to start right away. But what I talked about earlier about Sayamalu in the line, it's whether the correlation is 100, with the causation or not. Broderick Jones entered the starting lineup. The offensive line play went way up. It's almost work there then. So whether he gets all the credit or not, he definitely deserves. He was certainly a big part of it. So I definitely think there's still high hopes, or there are high hopes, and rightfully so for Broderick Jones's career. So that's at this point still looking like a good pick for sure.
So going back, looking over the last 10 years, an organization that prides itself on excellence, right? I understand commitment to excellence is hashtag trademark with the Raiders organization, which is just a hilarious punchline at this point. But you want to talk about one of the model Tiffany franchises in the NFL, the Steelers, drafted so well for so long. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, complete stinker first round picks. And then, obviously, Shazier was a great pick, but just for obvious reasons did not work out. T.J. Watt, amazing. The Minkah Fitzpatrick trade, like we talk about, that was solid. And then I am hesitant to label Najee Harris a bust or a bad pick at this point, but I kind of have a feeling like if I were in a room full of Steelers fans, I would be in the minority in my hesitancy. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that it depends on how you define bust, right? I mean, like we talked about, Terrell Edmonds, it was a starting level player. I mean, you're not talking like Josh. We mentioned Josh Rosen earlier, or mentioned the Raiders. We can just go through all them. Those are bust. But Najee Harris, I think it's fair to say, if you're redrafted, that draft would not go 24th overall.
When somebody's discussing your status as a first-round pick and they have to say things like, well, I mean, he's not Jamarcus Russell. Like that, you do not want to be in that space. That's not the conversation you want having around you. So now let me just give you quickly, and I'm sure you know this, but just to give perspective to everyone here in the audience, going back, that was 2013 to 2023. Let me give you 2003 to 2014. Sorry, excuse me, to 2012. We'll do 2002 to 2012. Okay. So 2002, they took, well, actually, in 2001, I just got to mention they took Casey Hampton. Yeah. Then the next year, they took Kendall Simmons.
By the way, we were broadcasting, weren't we, during that, or not? Or
we were, yeah. Up in the Penn State press box doing I don't think we were live. That's a funny story that I won't tell live on the air. I'm on the radio here on the airwaves of 98.7 The Fox. There's some language I can't bring up. But anyway, okay, so Casey Hampton was in 2001. And then listen to this run they go on. Okay, Kendall Simmons, like, okay, fine. Solid offensive line, like not spectacular, but a guy who started and played. Then 2003, boom, Troy Polamalu, Hall of Famer. Next year, Ben Roethlisberger, like elite quarterback, Hall of Famer. Next year after that, Heath Miller, maybe not a Hall of Famer, but is going to be in the conversation, like high impact, top level starter at his position for many, many years, a top performer on championship teams. Santonio Holmes, the next year, for whatever problems he had at the end of his career, he made one of the biggest catches in Super Bowl history to win the game. Then the next year, Lawrence Timmons, you know what I'm going to say here, Buzz. I almost used a bad word just now. Terrible pick. Terrible. To me, it is just such a crime. They have Paul Posluszny right there, like the embodiment of everything that franchise is. A Pittsburgh guy. You've got Jack Ham from Penn State, who was a Hall of Famer, and you pass up the chance to let Paul Posluszny wear black and gold. To me, it is one of the all-time great travesties in NFL draft history. Okay, so then next year, Rashard Mendenhall, 9/11 conspiracy theorist, but starting tailback on a Super Bowl champ. Ziggy Hood the next year. Marquise Pouncey, Cam Hayward, David DeCastro. That's another unbelievable 3-year run. Let's have Polamalu, Roethlisberger, Heath Miller. Then you follow that up with Santonio Holmes. Then you go Marquise Pouncey, Cam Hayward, and David DeCastro.
I mean,
that's an unbelievable batting average over the course of a decade in the first round. And you can go back and you can see it. You can see it in the results from those teams.
Yeah, and you said two surefire, one's already in the Hall of Fame, another surefire Hall of Famer. And I don't think, Pouncey, Hayward, and DeCastro will all be discussed as, they'll be in the room as a discussion. I think Pouncey probably is the best chance. I don't think DeCastro is going to make it. His career is a little bit too short, but at least they'll be discussed as that. Yeah, and that's what, they, and you're right. I mean, the Steelers are kind of in this, and the fans get frustrated. It's like what you have. It's like the Penn State thing, the analogy you made. And yeah, like everybody's, made the playoffs. It's like, win 10 games. I mean, again, talk to what the Lions do last year, and they won. What did they went? They went farther in the playoffs though with the Steelers. So, but they've been in this malaise of being average for a while, and maybe there's correlation there that the drafting of just average drafting probably. You're going back maybe 10 years now. You still have the Hall of Famer and Watt drafted over that decade span, and maybe another Hall of Famer and Minka. That wasn't the draft pick. Do you give him credit for that as a draft, or do you not say? But it's still the allocation of the draft pick. I think you can do that, but you have enough there that if you're not, to go back to the bus discussion. It's one thing not to be a guy that's the total just can't even get on the field, or you can't even play, or if you at least avoid those. And it seemed like they, by the end of Devin Bush wasn't starting for you by the end of his rookie contract. Neither was Jarvis Jones wasn't even starting for you, and Artie Burns wasn't even starting for you. If you're not even getting the Terrell Edmonds baseline of at least he's starting for you on a good defense, that's where it really starts to hurt because, and if you're not making up for it, then because I don't know how much, I mean, the first round pick is obviously the most important for obvious reasons, not really say anything there, but if you're, I don't know how good they've been, and we don't have time to go down and go every round or whatever either, and they've had some, like that 2017 draft you talked about. I mean, Juju and James Conner were the second and third round picks, and you certainly useful players that were very good for their draft slot, definitely. And if you're not getting it that way, and they had the elite quarterback for a while to keep them afloat, and add a win or two that you might not have got if you didn't have the Hall of Fame level quarterback there, maybe at the last part of the 2010s decade or so. And now you don't have, at least you don't think you have there. There's not assured you have that, certainly. And now, so if you can't get away with it, is what I'm saying, missing on draft picks if you're not going to have high level. I mean, the Chiefs could probably whiff on a couple first round picks, and like Clyde Edwards-Helaire was not a first round pick, but you know what? When you have Patrick Mahomes, you're okay. You whiff on one now and then.
Yeah, you got to riff on your comment about like you just need a wide enough time horizon. Like if you include the 1950s, like the Browns are the epitome of a quality franchise, and the Steelers are a joke, right? And then depending on what lens you're using. So I guess law of averages just shows that there's that unbelievable decade. Like to me, it is just like an underreported story. How for starting in even 2001, like Plex Burris was a very solid player for Pittsburgh for many years. You have this decade where they are like cranking home runs every time they come up to the plate in the first round. It's eventually going to start averaging out, and that's what the last decade has looked like. A lot of whiffs, man. Yeah. So the big thing tonight is just when you get your pitch, don't swing at air. And I think the good news, based on everything we talked about tonight, is that, need and opportunity are probably going to meet in that they need a center, and there's going to be an opportunity to get a legit first-round caliber guy. So, it'll be about, is it Graham Barton? Is it Jackson Powers Johnson? Or do they decide to go with the offensive tackle, or maybe try to take their chances on Zach Frazier out of West Virginia in the second round? But, like, center to me, at least feels like a safe pick where the floor is going to be, to use the language of our discussion here, the floor is going to be Terrell Edmonds or Najee Harris, like a player who's a nice guy who probably wasn't worth where you picked him, but could be, a 10-year starter for you, which is what it does seem like at
guard and center in particular, and they're obviously similar positions to a point, that because they're undervalued. Some teams would never take them high, probably, like we talked about. But when they got the cream of the crop of those, and even the Steelers have not traditionally, you just listed, and Kendall Simmons maybe doesn't, but he had the floor still. You talked about high floor, but DeCastro, when you draft a guard that high, it seems to me, and maybe it's anecdotal across the league, you don't miss. Because I think people will have to know, if you're taking a center or a guard in the first round, that he is elite. He's going to be good. I mean, Quentin Nelson was taken high, and he's been everything they thought. Like, I don't feel like there's that many busts at guard and center, because if there's any questions about them, they're going to fall anyway. And then, maybe there's a bust in whatever, third round or whatever. So it's safe in that way too, I think. And the Steelers, again, you went, how many guards? There was DeCastro, there was Pouncey, there was Kendall Simmons. They took, a little before your window, Alan Faneca, Hall of Famer. They've never, and does that matter? 26 years ago, as new GM, 2 GMs ago now, but they've always kind of maybe valued those positions, or done that, taken those interior line positions more than
they don't miss. And the point is, as we just established, you can't whiff. Yeah, you cannot do what you've done, which is whiff. So, Buzz, this has been the 2 hours flew by for me, man. It was so much fun. I appreciate everybody for tuning in and listening online or locally here on 98.7 The Fox. It's the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show, coming to you as we always do, 3 to 5 p.m. at State College's Quaker Steak and Lube. Draft is tonight. Good luck to your team. I know a lot of Steelers fans out there. Just don't whiff, folks. You can read Buzzsaw's coverage of the draft and everything Pittsburgh at triblive.com. And I will close as Ironhead always does. Be good and be safe, everybody. We are.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
Since retiring, I have spent my time searching the countryside for the hottest wings in America. I always seem to end up disappointed. You call these hot? Back off, Luigi.
Mamma mia.
Look, handsy busboy. Your wings suck! I knew I should have stuck with Quaker Steak's triple atomic wings. You think I'm tough enough?
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
Sioka Toyota of Williamsport invites you to stop in today or check us out online. We have the smart path to your next Toyota, like the all-new Crown, BZ4X, the all-new Grand Highlander, Corolla Cross Hybrids, Sequoias, and more. Over 100 new Toyotas here and on the way. Don't make a $1,000 mistake. Choose Sioka Toyota of Williamsport and see the Sioka dealership's difference. Buy or reserve yours today and see for yourself why Sioka Toyota is the only stop you need for your next new car. Sioka Toyota, it just feels right.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen Baker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen Baker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen Baker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon